Hey everyone, Anthony here, bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, and yes, I know, it's another Banners on the Road that we're doing as a video piece, but I'm doing it really quickly because there isn't going to be time to write anything up this fast, knowing what I'm like in terms of writing, because I want to get this out as quickly as possible before this evening's game. This is the Banners on the Road series here, where we have an in-depth look at the previous game I went to, and because I was last night at the first leg of the South 2 Cup final between the Guildford Phoenix and the Peterborough Phantoms. Of course, the second leg is this evening, the 23rd of February. I'm getting this out as quickly as I can so that people have got an opportunity to kind of hear about it before these two teams go back to battle again. So, last night, as I'm recording this, Saturday the 22nd of February 2025, the first leg of the Wilkinson Division, that is NIHL South 2 Cup final between the Guildford Phoenix and the Peterborough Phantoms. Final score from the end of the first leg is Guildford Phoenix 1, Peterborough Phantoms 2, 5. A big convincing win on the night from the Peterborough Phantoms. Goals in this one from the Phoenix, it was Ollie Dennis, and goals for the Peterborough Phantoms, a hat-trick from Connor Pollard and 2 goals from Nathan Pollard. So nice and easy in terms of the goal scorers in that one. In terms of Connor Pollard, he scored a 3-on-5 short-handed goal, and one of Nathan Pollard's goals, the 5th goal for the Phantoms, was a short-hander as well. If you've never been to a Guildford Phoenix game, but you have been to a Guildford Flames game, understand this. Only one side of the balcony is open. People aren't standing around down the bottom by the plexi. People aren't on the balcony on the penalty box side. Everybody's just on the balcony on the players' benches side of the rink, which is a bit of a strange, always a bit of a strange way of doing stuff as well, because I only go to Flames games when I commentate, so I can see where where I could generally commentate from. And I'm standing, and what I hadn't realised was I was like, I'm going to plonk myself in a position, I'm going to stand at the back, and I realised I plonked myself immediately opposite where I stand, which was a choice. The strange thing about this game really was the fact that the final period just blows everything open. The first 40 minutes, you could really clearly see in this game why these two sides have basically given each other no ground at all for the majority of the season so far. For those of you unfamiliar, the scheduling in South 2 this year has been a bit odd, mostly in the sense because of the extra cup competition, the Eddie Joseph Memorial Cup, which the Phantoms are participating in, but the Phoenix aren't, which has meant that games have been scheduled in quite an odd way for the Phantoms. So Peterborough have already finished their league campaign. They've played all 18 games they will play in the regular season. Guildford are in a position where if they run the table, they will win the league as a result. Coming into this night as well, Peterborough had lost one game. Guildford had lost one game to each other in each other's building. So when Peterborough played them in the league, they beat the Phoenix. When the Phoenix played in Peterborough, they were a couple of goals down in the third period, pulled all the way back, and in fact scored 2 goals really late on in the third to then take it to overtime and then won it in overtime. So Peterborough fans were a little bit on edge coming into that one. The first period was a case of the Phoenix making more of the running, started really well, and the Phantoms, unsurprisingly, when you've got the Pollard boys and Nathan Long and Matt Saville and Luke Clark in the side, the Slaver influence bleeds through. And actually, Peterborough were playing quite a stereotypical, almost National Division-esque kind of road game that the Peterborough Phantoms in the National Division play. And it was a lot of kind of sit back and try and break us down. And Guildford was struggling to do that. Lots of forward momentum, lots of zone time, lots of pressure. But ultimately, Luke Clark didn't have a great amount to do in the first 20 minutes, which was interesting as well, particularly for the fact that the Phoenix got a couple of power plays, and Blaine Evans, who I would confess is not necessarily my favourite referee to watch. I'm not a huge fan of Blaine's game management style, I should say. I think Blaine did a really good job in this game in terms of how he managed the whole thing, so fair play to him. Happy to be proven wrong on that particular point. But Peterborough just weren't giving Guildford the opportunity to get shots of quality, and were limiting Guildford to decisions where if the puck's going to get past us, Luke Clark is going to make this easy. Ultimately, the first goal comes right at the end of the end of the first period. Peterborough had a shortened power play. What happened was Guildford were already on the power play. They thought they should have got another power play when Teo Sire went down. They thought he'd been unfairly taken down. He wasn't, in my opinion. For me, he'd blown an edge under pressure. Mr. Evans doesn't make the call. Somebody shouts something from the bench. Phoenix give up the penalty because Blaine gave him misconduct, because that's exactly the sort of penalty that Blaine Evans calls all the time, and fair play to him on that level of consistency. But the shot comes in, it hits a Guildford player's stick who's trying to make the block, but unfortunately he just kind of sits up really, really nicely, and Connor Pollard scores inside the last minute of the first. In the second period then, things kind of flipped on its head, and actually the Phantoms started coming forward much more attacking intent. They'd kind of spent 20 minutes sitting back and waiting to see what would happen, and then started coming forward much more with much more pressure, and spent much more of the second period in Guildford's zone, much more in terms of extended periods of zone time. It's not Guildford weren't doing stuff, but they also they had much more of the first and had much less of the second as a result. Is arguably where you'd had 20 minutes where Guildford were kind of on top and Peterborough nicked a goal. What you ended up with in the second period was a period where Peterborough had been on top for the majority, but then they also gave up a goal as well. Not in the last minute. 35:07 was the time of the Phoenix goal, and on the power play with just a little bit of extra space, Luke Tull sets Ollie Dennis away, and it is fair play, a really, really good shot. And irrespective of the National Division minutes Luke Clark has played this season, he wasn't stopping that. It was a lovely snipe from Dennis. And so we head into the third period, and you kind of wonder what's going to happen there, because you'd seen Peterborough sit back in the first, come forward in the second. But what they'd done defensively was they'd not allowed Guildford high percentage chances, and the one chance that they'd got with a little bit of extra space they scored on. So what were the Phoenix going to do to try and work their way around what had been causing them so many problems? What were Peterborough going to do? Were they just going to kind of hold on and try and take it back to Breton and try and figure out something from there? And then the big problem was caused 7 seconds into the third period, because Connor Pollard hits the blue line, fancies a crack to try and make sure the keeper was paying attention, and it goes through the keeper. Unfortunately, Jack Garner in net for the Phoenix doesn't get to it, and Peterborough suddenly 2-1 up 7 seconds in, which is a horrendous start. The third then is pretty even for the most part. What we did, and the intensity cranked up quite heavily after that goal, but the what we ended up with was quite a bit not a great incident, where essentially off the puck, Nick Martin from the Peterborough Phantoms and James Buckingham of the Guildford Phoenix were taking hacks and whacks at each other quite a bit. There's a point where Buckingham ended up punching Martin in the back of the head. Mr. Evans doesn't call any of it because it's well away from the play. It's two guys. He may well have shouted something across to them if he wasn't aware that he'd done that. But then as the play has kind of continued, Martin has ended up on the puck, and Buckingham makes a point of lining him up for the hit. Now, I don't think James Buckingham has gone in to injure the guy there. He's put his hip down to try and take him out of the play and hip check him in open ice. Unfortunately, what he's ended up doing is, certainly from my angle, he's gone through his knee and taken him out. Buckingham ended up with a game misconduct for kneeing as a result. I think, for me, I understand why it was called. I did wonder potentially whether on its own as a singular incident it would have been worthy as a 5. Martin was down on the ice for quite a long time, was helped off to the dressing room, and did not return as a result. So I think probably people will rectify in their minds that idea. So Peterborough have this 5-minute power play to play with, and the big issue they had was for the first 2 minutes 30, 3 minutes of it, they were utterly rubbish on it. They were so bad on this power play and just couldn't make anything stick. Guildford were having more chances short-handed, and potentially just because they were able to exploit a little bit of extra space. But Peterborough didn't really do anything. And then having had one bad goal, Paul Garner, he ends up letting in a second. A shot comes in and hits the back plexi. It's hit the back plexi quite high and bounced back over the top of the net, over the top of the keeper. And nobody has found where the puck has gone. And it drops in front, and the only person paying attention to where that puck was Connor Pollard, who gets his hat trick and makes it 3-1 with just over 7 minutes to play. And from there, the issues persist. Guildford end up with multiple power plays. Peterborough having 3 people in the box at one point towards the end of this game, but the problem is that they pushed too high. They were looking for too much for kind of the perfect pass, and ultimately the problem that you have when you have one Pollard is you will also have the other Pollard, and Nathan Pollard ends up scoring 2 short-handed goals and in the back sort of 3-4 minutes of this game because the puck just goes up the wall. Nathan Pollard, who guested for Widnes the other week and scored a goal in his Widnes Wild debut in North 1, is more than capable of doing that. Puck is free, head down, off to the races, and you've already got a keeper who's clearly not in the best of confidence off the back of two goals that he will absolutely want back. You can't do anything about the 2 short-handers that went in because ultimately it's one-on-one with the keeper, and he tried his best and couldn't get to either of them, unfortunately. Superb shots, it should be said, from Nathan Pollard. But you blink and it's suddenly 5-1 at the end of the game. And ultimately, just a crazy 20 minutes could potentially have ended up deciding this cup final. What you end up with is today in Peterborough. So it's a 5:30 face-off today, Sunday the 23rd, up in Peterborough. If you're nearby, you're not following the Phantoms NIHL National Division team, definitely go watch this. If nothing else, you're going to see some silverware awarded on Peterborough ice. For Peterborough, I would almost, in fact I probably will, I will caution them against doing what most Phantoms teams would do in this circumstance, which is sit back and shut it down. For me, the best way to make this an easier thing for them is do what they did in the first and second last night, because you can't legislate for what Guildford necessarily going to do, but you can legislate for what you are going to do. Control the middle of the ice, force Guildford wide, because ultimately Luke Clark is going to save 99 or 999 out of 1,000 shots that come at him from a short angle when he's hugging his post. So if that middle of the ice is controlled, and guys don't think that putting passes into the middle is going to do anything, and especially even though the Phoenix were trying to push the top of the crease at times, guys were still taking shots from ridiculous angles that didn't work. And so ultimately, it can be like Slava Classic hockey. Sit back, defend, hit them on the counter. Part of me thinks actually the best thing to do is to come racing out of the gate in this game, counter what you know will be a fast start from Guildford because they're 4 goals in a hole, and put a couple of goals on them. Because if it's suddenly you get to the end of the first period and it's a 7-1, 8-1 aggregate lead, you have got 40 minutes of energy conservation, and then you get to pick up the shiny trophy at the end. The problem here is that there is arguably no better team across all 5 divisions of the National Hockey League at chasing a lead than the Guildford Phoenix. They have gone behind so many times, and they did it in Peterborough before. 4 goals, when it comes down to it, is almost nothing. Effectively, Guildford have got to score 5 goals in 60 minutes and not concede. Well, we know they can do 5 goals in 60 minutes because they did it to Oxford last week against the Rising Stars at the Oxpens. The problem here is that Guildford have got to be really, really defensively responsible. And ultimately, when they're not chasing the game, and if you take out random bounces that you can't control, they let up very, very, very few chances 5-on-5. It's a massive hill to climb. But if any team can find a way to climb that hill in this division, it is more than likely Guildford. Massively interested to see who starts in net for them tonight, just because off the back of what happened yesterday. But ultimately, Guildford have got it in them to find 5 goals. Like I say, the issue for them is that they have got to be prepared to literally block every shot, do everything and anything, and not let anything through. That's the really tough bit. And people will say that is insane, and I very politely point you towards the second leg of the South 1 Cup semi-final between Chelmsford, who are currently have one hand on the trophy in South 1, and Streatham, where they came into that game 5 goals down and we have the fantastic score of 6-0 after overtime. This game is definitely not done. And ultimately, I think Nathan Pollard knows that. Really fascinated from a tactical standpoint to see what they do. Because we all know what's going to happen. And Guildford are about to come launching out of the gate tonight. And the destination of the South 2 Cup is very much still in the balance. Very much advantage Peterborough. But hockey is hockey. And it's the greatest sport on earth for a reason, is because you don't know what's going to happen. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number 1 source for all things related to the NHL. Thanks for humouring me on this one so I could get it out nice and quick. Otherwise, what's current stream this coming Wednesday, of course, we'll review all of the cup final action from across NHL's Division 1 and 2, and a couple of the league games that have been played in places as well, so we'll have those bits, and of course all the news from across the National Division. We'll have a bit of a longer chat as well about what's happened to Hull rolling into Saturday too, because as you can appreciate, they are not happy bunnies with getting with getting a 5-0 and losing Lee Bonner for 4 games. But either way, the best and the only live show that covers all 5 divisions of the NIHL is Wednesday night, 8 p.m. here on YouTube, the BOTW What's Current stream. Have a really good rest of your Sunday. Let's keep an eye on all those cup finals. Be happy. If you can't be happy, then please be safe. For as my friend Scott Edwards would say, take care of yourself and somebody else. For banners on the wall at wordpress.com. This is Anthony Russell saying stay safe. And so long till next time, have a good one. We'll see you Wednesday, everyone.